as in all things, there's two sides to the issue, right? On the law enforcement side, they have an extremely difficult job, right? You know, you're talking about them being in the face of criminals every day. And even if they're not criminals, just, you know, people who might be violent. They have issues, you know, especially in urban areas of where a crime gets committed and they go to community, try and find out who might have done it. And the community is closed mouthed about it. So they have a hard time solving crimes, right? So, so there's just a lot of challenges. And then you have the people that they have to deal with that give them attitude or, you know, don't show them respect, right? And they're just trying to do their jobs. And so that creates, you know, kind of a challenging environment, you know, for them. But you know, if you go back, you know, quite honestly, to the beginnings of law enforcement, you know, and specifically related to the Black community, you find that law enforcement was there in large part, not in whole, but in large part to keep Blacks in line. So when Blacks were slaves, if Black, you know, escaped, you know, law enforcement would be part of the teams going to, you know, get back the escaped slaves. And then once you get to Jim Crow, you know, the law enforcement was there to kind of keep Blacks in line, keep them, you know, out of the way of the white population, you know, and really to protect rich folks from Blacks and so forth. I mean, that's always been the prime directive. I remember watching a show about Chicago law enforcement, you know, during the time of the World's Fair, where they had a very fledgling law enforcement activity. And, you know, basically that was their purpose was to, you know, protect the rich people from the poor people, but I digress. So again, if you go to, you know, Jim Crow days and then beyond that, you know, there's always been this tension in law enforcement that there's the expectation of the majority community that, you know, they don't want to deal with, you know, minorities or, you know, because the minority is always viewed negatively as dirty and stupid and criminal and so forth. And that's just created, you know, a long history of tension, you know, at least within the Black community towards law enforcement because, you know, I grew up on the South Side of Chicago and, you know, there's always that tension, you know, because of that need to kind of keep Blacks in line and protect white people or protect white people from Black people. And I've got 2 seconds left, so I did pretty good.
Well, Lawrence, thank you for that. And I want to unpack some of what you said. You've talked about law enforcement culture. And race has something to do with law enforcement culture. And there are some people that don't believe that to be the case. But if you don't believe that to be the case, it's simply because you're either ignoring American history or you just don't know it. But one of the things that you said at the beginning of your time to speak was, you know, when there's a lack of trust and there's a lack of a relationship and lines of communication are closed, crimes don't get solved in neighborhoods. And what LB was saying is that members of the general public provide information to members of the law enforcement community to help solve crimes. When they don't provide that information because of a poor relationship, poor rapport, lack of trust, that makes for unsafe communities. It makes for communities to have more crime if members of the general public aren't helping solve those crimes by providing information. And remember what Deputy Chief Rick said before we started. The community is the police and the police are the community. If we don't work hand in hand, it creates an unsafe environment for those people that live in that community and for law enforcement.